4. Some people said we would never get here. There's a couple haters in the chat that would say you would never make it to episode 4, Deep Shot Garry. And look at me now. Episode 4 of CFB Only. We are here. Thank you for joining. We have got a packed show tonight. We're going to talk coaches on the hot seat. We're going to talk Florida and Michigan schedule reviews. We've been doing those. This has been real fun to go through all the schedules. We're going to do that once again. And then we're going to talk about some surprise playoff teams. We're going to keep it within the same structure that we've done. We're going to do one in each conference. We're also going to talk about the potential rule changes here coming up in college football. Could happen as soon as 2026, okay? So keep your eye on these. We're going to talk about all of that. Thank you for joining. Before we get started, as always, I am going to ask, hit that follow button on TikTok and Instagram. We are a little over 3,000 followers on Instagram. We've got to get to 5,000 by the time 2026 college football season runs around. You know what I mean? This has got to get going, and I'm checking my phone right there to make sure I've got some sound, making sure you guys can hear me, and it looks like I'm good to go. So, again, give us a follow on TikTok and Instagram at Deep Shot Sports. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and thank you for being here. Down South Media, I'm sure you're going to enjoy this next segment that we talk about here. Thank you for being in the chat once again. All right, first thing we're going to talk about coaches on the hot seat in 2026. Now, tough subject for some, okay? There's got five coaches here. You could argue maybe there's some more. There was so much coaching change in the past year, right? This past college football season, during the season, that you have to think about, are that many coaches really in that dire situation? Because it seems like we have so many first-year head coaches, or so many second-year head coaches, or so many coaches that didn't get fired because their programs seem to want to reinvest into the program. So these are a list of people that I think if they don't do good this season, if things don't go right in 2026, these are the coaches that I think will be fired. All right, first one on the list, and I want you to be paying attention to this one, Down South Media. I want to get your thoughts. Shane Beamer. Shane Beamer is number one on my list for coaches on the hot seat in 2026. Let's go through his last 5 seasons. The 5 seasons he's been the head coach of the South Carolina Gamecocks. Shane Beamer is 7-6, 8-5, 5-7, 9-4, and 4-8. So, look, obviously, last season, when you think about let's think about just 2025 for a second, okay? Let's take away that great run in 2024. Let's talk about just 2025. He lost 3 games last year while having a fourth quarter lead: Missouri, Alabama, and Texas A&M. And we don't need to go into detail about what happened in the Texas A&M game, but it was a very blown lead. The other 5 games, he lost to Vanderbilt 31-7, LSU 20-10, Oklahoma 26-7, Ole Miss 30-14, and Clemson 28-14. So we couldn't muster up more than 14 points offensively all last season in any losses that we didn't have a lead in the fourth quarter. So that's a concern. Now, Shane Beamer did do something. He addressed the offensive coordinator and the offensive problems. They fired Mike Shula. Okay, if I botched the name, let me know, Down South Media. But they hired Kendall Browse. Now, if you don't know the name, Kendall Browse is, the son of Art Browse. So, hopefully no scandals going on there in South Carolina when this happens. But they do have kind of a fixed problem, or at least are trying to fix the problem, right? The offensive line last year was awful. Looks like they went to the portal, kind of mixed up, and kind of got some of those things going again. They've still got Lenore Sellers. They've still got Dylan Stewart. So you could argue Dylan Stewart is arguably the best defensive player in the SEC. Lenore Sellers, when he gets it going, when he's got time, when they've got an offensive system that works for him, he can be a Heisman candidate. Look, I said it last year going into last season. He can be a Heisman candidate. So I need to see that again out of South Carolina in 2026. I know it's not a perennial winning program, so I'm not saying they got to go win 10 games. What I'm saying is Shane Beamer cannot be clowning around like he did this past season. He cannot be clowning around the way he did going into the halftime against Texas A&M thinking the game was over. I've watched a lot of Shane Beamer press conferences. The guy really should want to get out of press conferences more than he wants to be in them. I think he wants to be in them way too much, way too long. Okay? So, Shane Beamer, get the offense fixed, get the offensive line, get the run game fixed with LaNorris or whoever you have at running back position. Things have got to get better because South Carolina football, when it's good, those fans are loud, and they're fun to have around, okay? But sometimes, and most of the time, it's sad. And last year, just the way they lost those games, losing all those games in the fourth quarter, not having any offense, it's a problem. And Shane Beamer is responsible for that. And on top of that, 2 of the last 3 seasons have been losing records. That just can't keep going. It just can't keep happening. If you go 3 out of 4 losing seasons, and you end the Lenore Sellers and Dylan Stewart campaign with absolutely nothing to show for it other than a 9-3 season and a loss to Illinois in the Citrus Bowl or whatever, the Cheez-It Bowl, whatever you had that year, that's just not going to cut it. So that's what I've got. Number 1 is Shane Beamer. Let's check the chat. Absolute hater. Absolute hater. But agreed, he needs to get to 8 wins. Here we go. Number 2. Mike Norvell, little interesting situation here, okay? Because Mike Norvell, he should have been fired already, right? But they kept him because essentially Florida State can't fire him because they have not enough money. They're losing money. They're like the biggest in-depth program in college football. His 6 seasons at Florida State, 3-6, 5-7, 10-3. 13-1, 2-10, 5-7. And now he's lost Gus Malzahn, who left, who I think he retired. I think that's what it was. So he's back to calling the plays for Florida State, which he used to do a couple years ago. I'm not really sure how that's going to work out. Apparently Florida State fans aren't happy about it, but I wouldn't be happy from a Florida State fan with anything that Mike Norvell has done in the last 2 seasons. I think one thing you could point to is Thomas Castellanos last year wasn't the worst quarterback in the world, but he's not like the best passer. And then you think about the year before, DJ Uiagalelei. I mean, he was just abysmal, which you kind of saw coming. He had a prior season at Oregon State that gave some life, but it was just awful for them in 2024. And now he's bringing in Ashton Daniels to be his quarterback. Can Mike Norvell just develop a quarterback? Do they not recruit quarterbacks there? Like, is there not a quarterback he can make good? I mean, I don't understand. Like, what does the coach do? If he's going to be calling the offensive plays, so he obviously has a hand in offensive football, and he can't make a quarterback for nothing out of his own recruiting classes? He just keeps going and getting these mid guys out of the portal. I mean, Ashton Daniels played for Stanford and backed up Jackson Arnold last year at Auburn. I don't know if anybody saw what Jackson Arnold did last year, but it wasn't great. And Ashton Daniels had some okay games at Auburn, but I just don't know if that's going to cut it. He has got to go get some real talent. And the statistics last year, when you look at Florida State, they were a very good offensive team in terms of the yardage they were putting up. A lot in those early games, obviously with Alabama and the 2 early games they played against nobodies, and the Virginia game. They put up some offensive numbers. They just got to win games. And I think if they got a better quarterback that was better in situations on third downs, red zone, things like that, that would fix it. And probably somebody that has some camaraderie with the team. But they just need to win games in Florida State. I don't really care how it happens. Florida State, if you would think if he goes to a bowl game this season, then Florida State fans are going to be happy about it. I'm just saying, win some games, Mike Norvell, because they obviously can't fire you. So just take the advantage. But you would think they cannot hold on to him again if they have a bad season, or they're just going to lose the fan base. They're going to lose the entire fan base if they just don't if they just don't get rid of him after 3 straight losing seasons. You cannot be doing that at Florida State. So that's number 2. All right, number 3, Luke Fickell. Another situation where he doesn't get fired after, his last 3 seasons, 7-6, 5-7, 4-8. So he's gotten worse every year at Wisconsin. And Wisconsin used to be one of those teams that you just thought were consistently good. They were like Georgia in the Mark Richt days. Like, they were good. They were never great, but they were good. They were a good football team. And he tried to change a lot of things, and it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. But until they said they weren't going to fire him, they were investing a lot into NIL and spending a lot of money. There was a lot of reports that Wisconsin was spending big bags in the NIL world, transfer portal world. The quarterback situation the last couple of years has been absolutely awful. There was a game last year Wisconsin won against Washington where the punter was the leading passer with 24 yards. So that's how bad the passing situation last year was for Wisconsin. I remember Tyler Van Dyke was the quarterback the year before that. He got hurt against Alabama. So it has just been rough going there for Wisconsin in the quarterback situation. Last year they scored 10 points or less 7 times. 7 times they scored 10 points or less. That's how bad the offense was. That was an atrocious offense they had out there in Madison, Wisconsin. Wisconsin used to be a tough, physical, Monty Ball, Melvin Gordon, James White. I'm probably missing some off the top of my head that I just can't think of. But they used to just have running backs and offensive line that would just pound you, and they were a tough physical team. They had some really good defensive linemen. You think about J.J. Watt. You just the list of great football players come out of Wisconsin. They used to be a good football team, and you just don't hear about that anymore. So hopefully they get that fixed up. But if they're going to keep Luke Fickell, keep him around, and say, hey, buddy, you're going to have to start winning some games, that's what I'm going to say too. Because Luke Fickell was a great coach at Cincinnati, and now it just seems like he's kind of dying off in Wisconsin, which is sad to see, but he's got to start winning some ball games. Number 4, Dave Aranda. He's going into his 7th year at Baylor. His first 6 years, 2-7, 12-2. They won the Big 12 that year. 6-7, 3-9, 8-5, 5-7. And this guy, look, it's the Big 12, okay? So, take it with a grain of salt. But this guy's a defensive coach. He got hired because he was the defensive coordinator for LSU back when they won the national championship. And he has just not done anything good defensively at Baylor. They hired a new DC from Kansas State, Joe Klanderman. So they're trying to fix that problem. They were one of the worst defenses in the Big 12 last year. They actually gave up 32 points a game. Only Oklahoma State, who did fire their head coach, was worse in defense last year than Baylor. And Baylor had a really good offense. Sawyer Robertson, Michael Tiggs, I think his name was Tiggs. Michael Tiggs, the receiver. So they have had a good offense and good weapons, but their defense has really let them down. It's a wide open league, and Baylor's got to be in the race. I picked Baylor last year to win the Big 12. That didn't work out. That didn't work out at all. So he's got to get it going, because if you're going to be in the Big 12 and your last three of your last 4 years you have losing records, it's just not going to cut it, dude. You're going this way. You got to go this way. You're going this way. You got to go this way. So Dave Aranda's just got to get it going. They just got DJ Lagway, so maybe the offense stays good. But again, the offense wasn't the problem. They brought in a coach to help fix the defense, but Dave Aranda definitely on the hot seat going into 2026. And the last one I got right here, Bill Belichick, the GOAT, right? Some would say. Not a Hall of Famer. Not a Hall of Famer as of now in the National Football League. Bill Belichick went 4-8 last year for North Carolina. None of the wins were impressive. Not a single one. I don't think they beat a single team that went to a bowl game. Look, Bill Belichick, and I said this last year on the Deep Shot podcast at one point, that they should have just got rid of him when it was going south at one point. And I don't know if my guy Caleb Vega's watching, but if he is, say something in the chat. This one's for you. Look, he is too old, first of all, and he has too much drama that goes around him with the Jordan stuff and just everything else that happens with Bill Belichick being there, right? Camera crews, everything else that goes on. And they've invested too much for this football program that was not great before, but wasn't awful, wasn't a laughingstock. They have got to get something out of Bill Belichick this year, or they've just wasted time. Okay, you can't go into year 3 with Bill Belichick being like, all right, I hope we make a bowl game this year with Bill. I mean, come on. You put your neck out there and hired one of the greatest coaches in NFL history, and you won 4 games. Your offense was abysmal, which they got a couple transfer quarterbacks. They got excuse me. They got 3 new quarterbacks out of the transfer portal. So something's got to hit, right? They hired Bobby Petrino, which is another, issue, right? You bring in that guy with Bill Belichick. I mean, issues on issues, right? And so something's got to get fixed on the offense. But the defensively also, that has got, Bill Belichick and Steve Belichick, his son, who is the defense coordinator, those things have just got to be, like that. Like, that cannot be a problem. So I think if Bill Belichick does not make a bowl game this year, it's over. The project is over. You're wasting so much time if you're North Carolina if you do not go and get somebody else other than this guy that can build the program, because if the program's just doing this with this guy, we're just not doing what we're supposed to be. Yeah, the offense was awful. Had the running game last year, 120th in the country. Not going to cut it. Bill Belichick teams run the football, play good defense. They didn't do good either last year. So, yeah, the shit's got to get fixed. Okay, that's going to end our Coaches on the Hot Seat in 2026 segment. Florida 2026 schedule. I've been loving doing these schedule reviews. I really enjoy just kind of going through the whole list and looking at everybody's schedule. So we're going to talk about Florida's here in just a moment. I think this schedule and the SEC schedules are really fun to look at. Obviously, Florida's but they're getting John Summerall to be the new head coach. They've got Aaron Philo coming from Georgia Tech. They've got Buster Faulkner coming from Georgia Tech. So they've got a new system out there. No more DJ Lagway, no more Billy Napier. I believe they kept Jaden Baugh. Fact check me, but I believe they kept Jaden Baugh as their running back. They've lost a couple receivers, but look, things are going to get going. Things may get fixed, but let's look at the schedule and let's give it a little review. All right. Week 1, FAU, Florida Atlantic. Got to play an in-state game to start the season. Respect for that. In-game rivalry to start the season. Got to love it. Week 2, Campbell. Shout out to my cousin's friend named Campbell. That's all I know about them. That's all I know. I think I know a girl in high school that went to Campbell to play softball, actually. So there we go. Softball school. I don't think they're much of a football school. So Florida, 2-0 start. More than likely a 2-0 start, which is more than they can say last season. So we're off to a good start right here. Here we go. Now, week 3, they play Auburn. Week 3, this is the first time since 2019 that Florida and Auburn are facing off. The first time at Auburn since 2011. So a little SEC stat for you right there. 2 G5 coaches going at it between Alex Golesh and John Summerall. One coming from South Florida, one coming from Tulane. That'll be a fun one. It's a big who's who game early in the season, if you think about it, because, but like really what I just said, right? You're going to have 2 new quarterbacks, 2 new head coaches, 2 new offensive systems, and the winner of this game is going to have a little momentum on their side, right? Because I believe Auburn plays Baylor and then plays a nobody, and then obviously Florida's playing nobody. So let's just assume the winner of this game is going to be 3-0. And I by all accounts, probably ranked. So this is where, if you're wanting the fan base to get behind you, you got to win this game. If you're Florida or you're Auburn, you got to win this game. No doubt about it. It has to happen. So I'm really looking forward to that one. First time since 2011 they played at Auburn. Crazy. Week 4. Ole Miss coming into town, into Gainesville. 3rd year in a row that Florida and Ole Miss are going to play. Obviously, Florida missed on Lane Kiffin. So this is We wanted your old head coach. He didn't like us, and now, you're probably still in a better situation than us. So that's sad. But if Florida, like I just mentioned with the Auburn game, is 3-0 heading into Ole Miss with a home game, who knows? Who knows? If Florida's 3-0 in this game, going into this game, that's just something to look out for. If Florida is 3-0 playing this game, I'm be interested. How is that going to look? Is Ole Miss's schedule? We haven't looked at that yet. But Ole Miss has to play Louisville in week 1. Let's just see. That's an interesting tidbit. Week 5, Missouri. So Missouri keeps coming up on these schedules that we go through. And I don't really have a lot of takes on Missouri. So I don't really know what else to say. But Missouri's got Austin Simmons, the old Ole Miss quarterback. He's going to be there, so you would presume that he's going to be the quarterback. Bro Pabula is no longer there. So just interesting to look at that one. That's at Missouri. First time since 2023. I just don't have a lot of general thoughts on Missouri, so I'm not going to, not spend a lot of time on that. South Carolina, week 6. Florida, South Carolina. First time since 2023 these guys are playing, since the SEC East days. Homecoming for Florida. What's that say about South Carolina? Florida's got you as the homecoming game. Kind of disrespectful, some would say. Some would say that's a little disrespectful to have somebody as their homecoming game. I'm just saying. If I was a team in the SEC and another team scheduled me as their homecoming, I would see that as disrespectful. I really would. We'll see. What's Florida's record at this point? Through 6 games. FAU, Campbell, Auburn, Ole Miss, at Missouri, South Carolina. What is their record? Okay. Week 7, they go to Texas. 3rd year in a row they played Texas. Arch Manning, we talked about Texas. Will Muschamp, former head coach of Florida, going to be playing against them. It's at Texas. This seems like where Florida's the next stretch of this schedule. It's going to start getting pretty tough for them. I just wonder, what is Florida's record going into this Texas game? Are they 4-2? Are they 5-1? Is Texas, what's Texas going to be like at this point? Florida, Texas, 3rd year in a row playing. Week 8, they got the bye that they always have before they play Georgia. And then week 9, they've got Georgia in Atlanta. Haven't beat Georgia since 2020. Not going to happen this year. I promise you. So, that's going to be fun. Game's going to be in Atlanta. Georgia's probably going to be undefeated. Florida's probably going to be reeling. Probably feeling maybe not even reeling. Maybe they're going to feel too good about themselves for where they are at this point in the season. But they're not going to win this game. Mark it down right now. Deep Shot Garry says Florida is not winning the Georgia game in Atlanta. Week 10, they play Oklahoma. First time ever these two teams have played as members of the same conference. They've played twice before, 2020 Cotton Bowl and in the national championship in 2008. And the game was played in 2009, but the 2008 season, the Tim Tebow, locker room speech, 30 minutes for the rest of our lives game. That was that one. So that one's interesting. Florida's got them at home. This is after the Georgia game. And the bye in the Texas. So that stretch seems like the hardest part of Florida's schedule right there. At Texas, bye week, Georgia, Oklahoma. You would think that that's probably safely 3 top 15 teams. 3 straight top 15 teams. That's the SEC for you. That is the SEC for you right there. 3 straight top 15 teams. I mean, they got these numbers right here on the on the thing I'm showing you guys. I think these are just projections. I don't think these are actual rankings because there's no actual rankings. But that's a tough stretch. Week 11, Kentucky, at Kentucky. Playing at Kentucky 2 years in a row. If you didn't know that. There's second year in a row they're playing at Kentucky, so the schedule mishaps happen there. If you guys didn't know, at one point in this rivalry, which used to play every year in the SEC East, Florida won 30 straight times. 30 straight times Florida beat Kentucky. Kentucky has won 4 of the last 5 games against Florida, including the beatdown they put on them last year when DJ Lagway got benched. So, Kentucky, obviously new head coach over there, new quarterback coming in. We'll see what happens, but that's just an interesting tidbit. And in Week 12, we've got Vanderbilt, first time since SEC East days in 2023. They dodged Diego Pavia. Florida has only lost to Vanderbilt twice since 1989. Staggering. So Vanderbilt obviously has not been a great program. Neither has Kentucky for a long time. Vanderbilt didn't get the chance to play Florida the last couple years. Maybe they would have got. Maybe that number would have went up. Unfortunately, it did not. So Vandy at Kentucky, Vandy, and then at FSU to end the season. They've owned them the last 2 years. We just talked about Mike Norvell probably getting fired. Who knows if Mike Norvell's even the head coach by the time this game gets here? That's a question. Does Mike Norvell coach in the Florida State game in 2026? Yes or no? Yes or no? That's Florida's 2026 schedule. All right, next up, we're going to look at Michigan's 2026 schedule. Now, obviously, we've talked about it, if you've been here, that these schedules in the Big Ten don't really compare to the ones in the SEC in terms of excitement that we're running down, but they are schedules nonetheless. So we're going to pull this one up here in just a second. Obviously, Michigan's got a new head coach, Kyle Whittingham. They've got Bryce Underwood back. They've got a whole new regime. A lot of the Utah players are now on Michigan. So this is going to be a whole new club. They don't have to deal with Sharon Moore and his prostitution problems anymore. So this could be a new up for Michigan. This could be a whole new start. Whole new start for the Michigan Wolverines. All right, let's pull this schedule up. I've got to fix the camera here situation. All right, here we go. Let's fix this camera situation. Okay. All right, Michigan's 2026 schedule. Week 1, Western Michigan. Some would remember that this game was supposed to be in Germany. They originally scheduled this game for Germany. Don't know why, but they did. Thank God it's not there anymore, because that would have been so stupid for two teams in the same state to be playing a game in Germany. We shouldn't be playing college football games across the country anyway, but I digress. Week 2, Oklahoma. Lost last year 24-13. Third time ever playing this game between the two programs. Obviously last year, and then the last time was like in the 1950s or 60s. Obviously could be a huge statement game for Michigan or Oklahoma, right? If Michigan wins this, they've got a pretty easy schedule for a while after that. So this could be huge. If Michigan could pull this one out, it's a home game, probably going to be big noon kickoff. They're in a really good spot. Michigan is in a really good spot if they can beat Oklahoma. Don't think they will, but if they do, they're in a really good spot. Week 3, they got UTEP. First time ever playing UTEP, so props to them. Starting new traditions. Got to play UTEP. And in week 4, they've got Iowa at home. First time since 2023 in the Big Ten Championship that these two teams are playing. That was the year Michigan won the national championship. Iowa has not beaten Michigan since 2016. Iowa, we've talked about this a little bit on this show. Who knows what kind of program they are right now or what kind of quarterback they're going to have. Their offense has just been awful for a long time, and it probably will continue to be awful for a long time. So Michigan, you would think, would handle that. It's a home game. Week 5 at Minnesota. Minnesota has lost to Michigan 5 straight times. No Minnesota win since 2014. The all-time series record, 78-25-3 Michigan. Absolute ass-kicking. Minnesota football. That seems like a program that I just not want no business being a fan of. Minnesota. Maybe the state in general. Want no business. Week 8, bye week. Week 6, bye week. Week 7, they've got Penn State. First time since 2023 that they're going to play Penn State. Michigan has won this game 3 straight times. Big game in the Big Ten coming off a bye week for Michigan, right? Because if you're looking at the schedule, right, Oklahoma was probably the toughest out they got in week 2. Is Michigan 5-0 at this point? Is Michigan going to be 5-0 when they play this ball game? Because if they are, and they get past Penn State, who I'll talk about a little later, big spot for Michigan in week 7 at home. And then week 8, they've got Indiana at home. Back-to-back huge home games for Michigan. Penn State and Indiana. Indiana won this game in 2024. They've only won this game twice since 1988. All time, Michigan is 62-11 against Indiana. If you ever want to put in perspective what Indiana did, that puts it in perspective right there. Indiana never beats Michigan. They beat them in 2024. First time they had done it in a long time. They've only done it twice since 1988. I'm telling you, if you look at Michigan's schedule, if they're past Oklahoma, I think at worst, by the time they play Indiana, they're 4-2. At the worst, by the time they play Indiana. If they're 5-1, this becomes a huge matchup. If they're 6-0, huge matchup. So just look out for that one. Week 9 at Rutgers, first time since 2023 they're playing. 9-1 all time versus Rutgers. The only loss they had to Rutgers was in 2014 when Rutgers first got to the Big Ten, and they've won every time since. 2014, I can't remember what happened with Michigan that year, but it must have been rough if they lost to Rutgers. It must have been pretty rough. Rutgers is another team that, I talked about Missouri earlier that I don't have a lot of thoughts on them. Rutgers is going to be another team that I really don't have any thoughts on. Absolutely zero. Week 10, Michigan State. Obviously, huge rivalry game. Michigan has won 4 straight in a row. Different regime for both teams. You got Kyle Whittingham and Pat Fitzgerald at Michigan State. So two new, very, very much needed new regimes for Michigan and Michigan State. This one's at home for Michigan again. Good stretch right there of home games because they get Penn State, Indiana, and their rival Michigan State at home, which is huge for them. Week 11, they go to Oregon. Oregon won this game in 2024 last time they played. There's 6 all-time games between these two teams. In the 1900s, the 3 games, Michigan won all of them. And since the year have turned 2000, Oregon has won all 3. This is huge because they're going to go to West Coast. We've talked about that before where, teams going from the East to the West Coast don't usually do too well. I'm probably going to favor Oregon in this game early on in, early March. We'll see when we get there, but it's going to be really tough for Michigan to go on the road in Oregon this late in the season. This will be their 5th game in a row. Obviously, they have an early bye week in week 6, so we'll see what happens there. Week 12, UCLA. First time ever these two teams are playing as Big Ten opponents, and the first time they've played since 2000. Interesting. Played a couple Rose Bowls against each other. Played in the Rose Bowl, obviously, at UCLA. That's where they play, but they've played in the Rose Bowl game a couple times. It's been a really long time. So UCLA, Michigan. That's kind of the cool part about these conferences when you think about it. Like these matchups that you don't ever get to see or used to see, you get to see. So that's one of them. Who knows what UCLA is going to be? Maybe 2-9 at this point, but you get to see that game. And then week 13, they got Ohio State. Can they make it back? Can they take the game back? Can they take grips of the game back? Because last year they obviously couldn't do it. Can they get back to owning Ohio State? Some people want to know. Can they get back to owning Ohio State? All right, next thing up. Surprise playoff teams in 2026. All right. This is basically, I'm taking one team from each conference, and I'm saying, look, I'm not projecting these teams to make the playoffs right now in early March. That's not what I'm here to do. What I'm here to do is tell you if these teams make it into the playoff in 2026, come back to this video and come back and remember that Deep Shot Garry told you, don't be surprised if these teams make the playoff. Don't be surprised. All right, first up, this is going to be a fun segment right here. Don't be surprised if Penn State makes the playoff. Let me take a sip of water. Don't be surprised if Penn State makes the playoff. Matt Campbell, new head coach at Penn State, coming from Iowa State, bringing 24 Iowa State players. Not only is he bringing Rocco Beck, his quarterback, Carson Hansen, one of his lead running backs, who ran for almost 1,000 yards last season. He's bringing 4 receivers, 3 tight ends, 4 offensive linemen, 2 defensive linemen, 4 linebackers, and 4 DBs. 24 players. He's got pretty much a whole starting lineup of players coming with him from Iowa State. Now, obviously, Iowa State and Penn State, totally different situations. Last year, Iowa State started out pretty hot, kind of fell off because they had some injuries. But nonetheless, okay, they brought in D'Anton Lynn as defensive coordinator from USC, who, I'm not going to say he's the best defensive coordinator in the world, but he does have a good track record from coaching in the NFL. And I think here's the cherry on top for Penn State. If you want to talk about a team that has a chance to make the playoffs, it's Penn State. And I'll tell you why. We're going to pull up their schedule here in just a second. Look at this schedule that Penn State has in 2026. Look at it. This schedule in 2026. Marshall, Temple, Buffalo, Wisconsin, Northwestern, USC at home, at Michigan, bye week, Purdue, at Washington, Minnesota, Rutgers, Maryland. What? Cupcakes. They have a look. We can safely assume right now that Penn State will probably be 5-0, right? They'll be 5-0. They'll play Marshall, Temple, Buffalo, Wisconsin, and Northwestern, and they'll be 5-0. Then they play USC at home, okay? Then they go to Michigan. They have a bye week, Purdue, and then at Washington. So they are USC, Michigan, and at Washington are their toughest games they play. And you could safely assume that they will probably beat USC or Washington. I'm just going to put it out there that they're probably going to win one of those games. And if they beat Michigan, they're going to be 11-1, 10-2 at the worst looking at this schedule. 10-2 at the worst when I'm looking at this schedule. So you tell me, is it that crazy? Is it that psychotic to think that Penn State in year one under Matt Campbell can get right back to where they were in 2024? I don't think it's that crazy. I really don't. I think it's actually super likely. The more and more I look at it, the more and more I see all the continuity that they have in their program. I mean, they have got everybody that they want to have. They've got the entire team from Iowa State. They don't have to learn they don't have to learn a new system. They don't have to learn new players or get along with each other. Everybody is from Iowa State, and they're just putting on different jerseys, and they're just going to play a different football conference. Penn State, with that schedule, with the players that they have, with the coaching, very likely to get right back into playoff mix in 2026. All right, my SEC team is Auburn. Don't be surprised if Auburn makes the playoff in 2026. Now, this one's a little, I'm not as confident in this one as I was with Penn State. It's a little bit tougher. Obviously, same kind of situation. Auburn is bringing 13 players from South Florida, 2 quarterbacks, so they've got a situation figured out for the next couple years. Bringing in their running back, who pretty much all the wide receiver and tight end depth that they had from a year ago. All the production that they had from those positions are coming with them. A few offensive linemen and a couple DBs. So the SEC schedule obviously is a little bit difficult, so it's not as much of a slam dunk as it feels like with Penn State. That I feel really confident about it. They are bringing back DJ Durkin as their defensive coordinator. Let's take a look real quick at the schedule that Auburn has. Let me pull it up right here. Baylor, Southern Miss, Florida. We talked about that game a little bit ago. Vanderbilt, at Tennessee, at Georgia, LSU, Ole Miss, Arkansas, at Mississippi State, Samford, and Alabama. So you would assume if they're going to try to make a run at this playoff, they're going to have to beat Georgia or Alabama, right? That's going to have to happen. Well, you know, they're on the road in both, so that's tough to see. So let's say they lose both of those games. Are you confident enough that they can go out and beat Tennessee on the road, LSU at home, and go to Ole Miss and win? It's not as confident as I am about Penn State, but I like Alex Golish. I like Byron Brown. I've said that multiple times on this show. So I think if there's any team in the SEC that you're thinking about, you know, which team could surprise us, I think it's Auburn. I just think because that offense is going to be potent. The defense I worry about, but at the same time, they're going to have the same defensive coordinator. They still had an okay defense last year. I don't think it's that big of a surprise. I don't think it's that big of a problem to think that Auburn, if everything goes right offensively, which you would think because they have all of the skill players that they had a year ago, it could work. It could work. So don't be surprised if Auburn makes the playoffs in 2026. Next one up, ACC representative, Louisville. Let me take a sip of water. Now, Louisville's an interesting case. 5th best transfer portal class, bringing in Lincoln Reinholz, backup quarterback from Ohio State. Seems like he's going to be the starter. So they lost Miller Moss. Isaac Brown, the running back, got hurt last year. So he's coming back. And they did lose Duke Watson. Shout out Mary Persons. He was a running back last year. Or he in relief of Isaac Brown. But let me pull up their schedule real quick. Week 1 right here, they have a prove-it game against Ole Miss. Let's say Louisville wins that game. Okay? Then they have Villanova, SMU, Wake Forest, NC State, Florida State, Syracuse, Stanford, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, Pitt, at Kentucky. Let's say they beat Ole Miss and then they beat SMU. Find another loss that you're not comfortable with them. If they've won those two games, if they're 3-0, if they beat Ole Miss and SMU. Not saying they are. I'm just saying if they do. And even if let's say they lose the Ole Miss game, they can make a run in the ACC with this schedule. Okay? SMU is early in the season. They have not had success against SMU in the 3 years or 2 years that SMU's been in the ACC. But they don't play Miami, so that's huge. All right? And then when you look at Jeff Brom in Louisville the last couple years, I found this interesting. Last year they lost 2 games in overtime after they lost like pretty much everybody, and they lost both their running backs. They lost to 1 point to Clemson. They got smoked by SMU. But in the last 2 years, that game against SMU is the only time that Louisville has lost a game by less than or by more than one possession. They've lost. I'm losing my words here. But what I'm trying to say is they've only lost 1 game in the last 2 years by more than one possession. So they are a tough team. Jeff Brom's a good coach. I would not be surprised if Louisville makes a run in the playoffs in 2026. And in my last team right here, Houston, my Big 12 representative. Don't be surprised if Houston makes a run to the playoffs in 2026. Houston's got the 8th best portal class. Connor Wegman's coming back as a quarterback. He was a quarterback at Texas A&M for a while, for those that remember. I think that Houston is, with Willie Fritz, the head coach, had a good season last year, beat LSU in the bowl game. Mekhi Hughes, the running back for Tulane that went off and then went to Oregon, He's coming back with his old coach. So that's huge, right? When you look at the transfer portal guys that they got, you're talking about guys out of Texas Tech. You're talking about guys out of Oregon. You're talking about guys out of Florida. You're talking about guys out of Ole Miss. It's just interesting. And then when you want to look at the schedule, which we will do right here, look, Oregon State, Southern Jaguars at Texas Tech. So Texas Tech is early. What if they win that game? Look at the rest of the schedule. At Georgia Southern, UCF, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Utah. That Utah is probably the toughest game they got left. Bye week, Cincinnati, Colorado, West Virginia, Baylor. And if Houston somehow beats Texas Tech in week 3, it's probably going to be a smooth sail, unless obviously injuries happen. But I think this is a team to think about in the Big 12 with a quarterback that's going to be like in his 6th year of college football, with a running back coming back to play with his old head coach, with a team that has momentum, with a lot of returning production. Offensive line and defensive line was obviously very leaned on in the portal. I'm just letting you know, don't be surprised if Houston makes a run in the 2026 college football playoff picture. Okay, and last thing before we get out of here, potential rule changes have been talked about. Some pretty funny ones as well, if you haven't been checking them out. So the NCAA or the Rules Commission, whoever these people are, they met and talked about some potential rule changes for 2026. First one up, targeting penalties. So they're talking about potentially having targeting penalties not carry over. If you have a targeting penalty in the second half of a game, they're saying that they want to change that and not have it carry over to the next game. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Because I hate that rule. That if you get ejected in the second half, you have to sit out the first half of the next game. It's bad enough we're ejecting guys. I love that one. We're getting that one done. None of these are set in stone yet, but these are things they're talking about, things that were proposed, and I think that's a great one to start. Targeting penalties don't carry over to the next game. Just let them sit out the rest of the game. It's already bad enough that we're doing that. Love that one. Number 2, the change in uniform. So basically, this is the short shorts rule. That kicker from Oklahoma who was wearing the short shorts, this seems to be all in his problem that he caused this. They want to do covered from the waist down. So pretty much like the NFL does. If you've watched the NFL, they have their socks come up all the way to their knees. Like you can't really show anything below the belt, right? You can't really see their legs or, everything's got to be covered up. So that's basically what that is. They're just trying to be a little more uniform, and pretty much everyone's got to wear the same thing. So no one can be wearing tiny shorts or stuff above the knees. And, that one, I kind of like. I think it's funny when some guys have something different on, but I can see why they're trying to, be a little more uniform, look a little more professional. These guys are getting paid after all. Let's look a little bit more professional. Number 3, offensive pass interference changed from 15 yards to 10 yards. Now, at first, I thought they were talking about defensive pass interference when I was reading about this, but they're not. They're talking about offensive pass interference. I guess that's fine. Like, if this was defensive pass interference, no way. No way we're changing this from 15 to 10. So I'm glad that I, reread this thing, because it is not something I can get behind if defensive pass interference went from 15 to 10. It should be a spot foul, really, if we're being honest. But offensive pass interference is talking about going 15 to 10, which I think I can get behind in terms of, things I don't really care that much about. The offense has to go back anyway. Let's, just make it less on them. That's fine. And then the fair catch kick rule, which is another thing they have in the NFL. Basically, I did a lot of research on this today, and the Chargers did it a couple years ago. Basically, you can catch a fair catch, and it's usually in for like end of the half. If you catch a fair catch at the end of a half or the end of the game, and you're within field goal range, you can basically have a free kick, essentially. Like nobody can get near you. You can just kick the ball, and if you're in field goal range. It's a weird rule. In the NFL, it's only happened like a handful of times. I said the Chargers did it a couple years ago against the Raiders. But basically, if there's 10 seconds left in the game and the team that punts it to the 45-yard line, and you call fair catch as time's running out, you can essentially then kick a field goal with no pressure on you either. Like nobody's even lined up on you. You can have a holder or you can do a drop kick, which I don't know why you would need a drop kick, but you can do a drop kick. And yeah, that's what it's used for. I don't know how much that would get used. It would pretty much probably essentially stop teams from ever punting the ball late in situations like that. Like, I guess you would just take the safety, or I don't know what you would do in those situations, but that one's kind of a weird rule as well. So, yeah, targeting penalties don't carry over to the next game. Covered up from the waist down in clothing, offensive pass interference in 15 to 10, and the fair catch kick rule are some of the things they are talking about for potential rule changes for next season. So, let me know what you think about those. I don't really know if I'm, too upset about, any of them being gone or whatever, but they are being talked about. Well, that's going to wrap up episode 4 of CFB Only. Before we get out of here again, just want to ask one more time, follow at Deep Shot Sports on Instagram and TikTok. We're on the climb. Got to get to 5K by 2026 football season, all right, which is in August, late August, early September. I love doing this show every week. Keep coming back. Subscribe to the channel so you can find more every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Thank you again for being here. I appreciate you. Come see me in the chat next week at 7 p.m. Deep Shot out.